Well, hello everyone, and welcome. Welcome to another episode of Cedric Unplugged. This is the space where we strip away the noise and get to the real conversations behind leadership. I'm your host, Cedric 𝗨𝗱𝗏𝗏, and today we're diving into something every organization talks about, but few truly get this right: leadership development. No titles, not titles, rather, not positions, but the actual work of building leaders who think, lead, and influence at a high level. But before we jump into today's conversation, I want to take a moment to share something that we celebrated today. I launched today, and I'm really excited about it. It's called Turning Pages: Write, Edit, and Publish, an AI-powered platform designed to help you move from idea to finished book with clarity and structure. Now, I'll put the link in the comments so you can go and check it out. Because one thing I've seen over and over again, especially with leaders, especially with writers, is that a lot of people have a message, they want to get it out, but they don't know how to do it. They don't have the structure. So this platform is built to change that. So if you're thinking about writing a book, if you've ever dreamed about writing a book, if you already have one designed and you're ready to publish it, guess what? Turning Pages is the platform for you. Like I said, it's an AI driven platform. We developed it in-house from the ground up, everything in it. We have our proprietary software that nobody else has, which is called 𝗨𝗏𝗱𝗏𝗏 analysis. It's a 9-point analysis to help make sure your book is structured right. We're not just helping you write any book. We're helping you write books that matter. So I hope you check it out. turningpages.io. I'll put the link in the comments here in just a second. But tonight, tonight I have an outstanding guest with me, and I know that you'll be impressed by her. So I'm going to go ahead and bring her up on stage. So joining me today is Miss Tina Grimes. Tina is an entrepreneur in the leadership development space who has dedicated her work to helping individuals and organizations grow leaders from the inside out, grow people who are trying to make an impact through their leadership. Tina is the powerful CEO of Tina Enterprises, turning insight into action. She's an international speaker, an executive coach, and a trainer with over 30 years of experience transforming leaders, teams, and organizations worldwide. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the conversation that we have with Tina tonight. Welcome, Tina.
Thank you. And that's turning intent into action.
Oh, you know what? That did say intent, right? I said insight, right? Well, they get insight and they have to turn it into action. But yes, turning intent into action. So welcome to the show. I'm excited to have you here.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So, Tina, here's where I want to start, right? So before we get into frameworks and strategies, I think it's important to understand the person behind the work. So because leadership development isn't something that you just study, it's something that you live, you experience, and it shaped you over time, that allows you to shape organizations. So let's go back to the very beginning, right? So who is Tina Grimes, and what led you into the work of developing leaders?
Right. So going back to the beginning is exciting for me, Cedric, because the beginning of this work for me is 33 years ago. So if you're wondering, I was about 3 years old when I started, right? 33 years ago. But I've always admired the work of leadership. And what I really remember coming out of undergraduate school was my heart and passion and desire to really serve people and equip people and give people information. And so who I am and what I do, for many people, they say it's not the same, but for me, it is, and it always has been. Even when I look back over my life, and I even think back to when I played basketball and ran track and did all of these things. And I like to say that I am an athlete, although my children like to say that I should say I was an athlete.
Past tense.
They like me to say past tense, but I still like to use present tense. But, when I think about it, all of it really, whether I was on the court or anchoring relays in track and field all those years, and then moving into the professional space, that coaching aspect has always been with me. Training people, moving individuals and organizations. It's just something that's always been a part of my life. And so when I look at my work that I do now, it's so intertwined. And that's the beauty of it for me, that I get to wake up every day and do something that I know and that I've known since 23 years old, that I'm purposed to do in life. So that's a little bit about who I am and what I do. But again, they're very closely intertwined. And in terms of how did I come into the leadership space, or what actually encouraged me to do that, I was really blessed growing up to be involved in a lot of things. And my mother always found something for me to do, different organizations and things like that. And so I was a part of an organization that many of the viewers may be familiar with. It's called 𝗟𝗲𝗱𝗿𝗀. And 𝗟𝗲𝗱𝗿𝗀, their mission was to develop and place talented minority youth in business and industry and prepare them for corporate and community leadership. So I say that mission because that is still the mission statement, and it was embedded in me so much that I started looking early on in life at leadership and what is leadership. And that organization did a phenomenal job of preparing me for any corporate space that I could ever walk into, in addition to the training that I was already getting from home. But it was the leadership part of that really stood out for me. And we spent endless Saturdays, just about every Saturday of the summer. I would intern Monday through Friday. And on Saturdays, I was at Washington University, sitting in leadership training. But here's the thing. I was in the audience, but I always saw myself in the place of the facilitators. Like even when I was in high school, I was like, I can do that. I can talk about that. And I still can even remember some of the topics like assertiveness versus aggressiveness and those things that they would come in and talk about. So leadership was something that was really instilled in me and ingrained in me very early on. Like I said, throughout everything that I did, from athletics to academics to extracurriculars. And here I am today, 33 years later.
Okay. All right. Well, that is awesome and outstanding. So when you were 3 and you started doing this, man, it must have been. So what would you say, when you say what's broken in how most organizations develop leaders today? What would you say to that?
Wow. So I would say what's broken is like this missing piece of emotional intelligence. I think that organizations spend so much time talking about leadership skills and, how do you lead people and what do you do and so forth. And so little time with the self-analysis or the introspective look to identify like, what is that leader's EQ, as they call it, right? And helping other leaders to develop that, because there's so many times that I see in my work where people are in leadership roles, but they may not have necessarily led in any capacity before. And so they're expected to lead, and they often don't know how to deal with their own feelings and emotions and all of those kinds of things. And so they compartmentalize, and it's kind of a separate box, this emotional intelligence from leading. And so I have found myself consistently saying, as I'm doing leadership training around the world, that's a missing piece. But because I turn intent into action, I can't leave it there. So I've actually developed a very, very good emotional intelligence and EQ training that I'm now doing also for ministries and for corporations and nonprofits and things like that. So that's one thing to know about me, is that when I see a gap, I can't sit back and just talk about it. I have to figure out how to be a solution to that particular thing.
That is always outstanding, finding solutions to corporate problems, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what's one misconception about leadership that needs to die, that just needs to go away?
Wow, just one. Ooh, just one. Well, I'd say one misconception about leadership that needs to die is that there's this congruency between tenure, or amount of time a person is in a particular space or in a particular company, that equals their leadership abilities or their maturity in leadership. I think that needs to die, because oftentimes people feel like the people that have longevity, the folks that have been there and they know the ins and outs of the job, that they're naturally the leaders. So that's one that I would say needs to die. Those things, you can have new people come in that are just as ready to lead, oftentimes, as people that have been in a corporation for a very long time. And then I think the reverse of that is that if there is someone who's been there for a long time, a lot of times some of the ways that things have been done in organizations or in companies, if you look at leadership as just tenure, you can be stuck. And we know that growth should be something that should continually happen.
Yes, definitely should continue to happen. So if a leader today said, I'm a leader because of what I do, what would you say to that?
If they said they're a leader because of what they do?
Because of what they do.
Yeah, I would very quickly help them to understand that leadership is beyond just what they do. Leadership also is how they do it, how they do it, and not just how they do it, but how they, I won't use the word lead again, how they equip others to also do it, right? Because as a leader, I shouldn't even continually have to do it. I should also be empowering others so that they can do it, so that I can have the space to be the visionary and to continue to create.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. So I heard someone say that last week. That's why it just popped in my mind as a reminder. And so let me just ask someone else, because I can say it one way and somebody else will say it totally different. So thanks for that. So we started off talking about your background and what brought you into leadership, strong foundation. And I think it sets the stage for what leadership really requires. So let's take this a step farther. All right. So what I want to do, I want to get into actual work of developing leaders, right? So what it looks like in practice and where most people get it wrong. And this gets really into what I say is real leadership development, right? What separates, so the question is, what separates managers from true leaders?
I believe that the main thing for me, of course, I am always growing and developing. So when I say what my opinions are, I always preface it by saying, it doesn't mean that mine is 100% right, because I'm smart enough as a leader to understand that I'm always growing and developing myself, right? But what I believe that I would say is the separator is vision. I believe that real leaders, great leaders, are visionaries. And so they not only execute and do the day-to-day, but they have vision and they're able to see where an organization can go, and not just where they are right now. So I think that's the main separator, because, managers are more task oriented, let's get the functions done. But the leaders are the ones that can set the stage for what's coming next. And also the leaders are the ones that can stop something that's currently happening and say, we're not doing it like this anymore. Let's just scratch it all and set vision in a way that they can go in and start over again, even if necessary.
Yeah, I love that. So what would you say is the first skill you develop in every leader that you coach, right? And let me preface this a little bit, or set the stage for this a little bit. Every leader has something that they can do a little bit different, a little bit better, right? People who are tuned in either live or listening to the recording of this, they have leaders that they've worked for that have some had some great skills, some had some good skills, and some had some skills that you just want to like scratch and throw away, right? But what's that first skill that you want to develop in a new leader?
Yeah. So I strongly, firmly believe that connecting is that skill that every leader should have. And personally in my work, whether I'm coaching someone one-on-one or I'm doing a training at a company or an organization, I'm going to start with connecting. And I believe that people are your greatest asset. And so if a leader is able to connect with people, that's half the battle. I find it, even with leaders that are leading at high levels and, have great titles, if they're missing that connecting piece, the organization, the culture, or the fabric of the organization is really missing something. So connecting with people.
Okay, it's connecting. All right. So, hey, audience, here's what I want you to think about. And I want you to comment on if you can. So, how good are you at connecting with people? Right. And this doesn't have to just be in work. It could be in your social life. It could be in your personal life at home. How good are you at connecting? Now, when I say connecting, one of the things you got to really think about is how good are you at asking questions? See, connecting is not about telling people. It's about asking questions and understanding people. Right. So how good are you at connecting with other people? Now, feel free to put in the comments if you are good at it and what makes you good at it. If you know someone who you work with or have worked with in the past, they're good at it, drop it in the comments. Let us know. Right. But if you're not good at it, be willing to say that as well. All right. I'll start off when I was a young leader. When I first got out of the military and I was a leader, I wasn't great at connecting because in the military, I didn't have to worry about if you didn't do the job. If you didn't do the job, I just call the police and say, hey, come pick him up because he don't want to do what we want him to do over here. Right. So we just put you in jail. In the civilian world, they don't do that. They need to, but they don't do that. So tell us, how good are you at connecting with others? Right.
Yeah. And can I share something there also? Yeah. So, I have to put a plug in for my #1 bestseller in 4 categories. It's called Grand. And I actually talk about the art of connecting. So I'm so passionate about this that this is my 3rd book. And in at least, I think in all 3 of them now, I've talked about connecting and the art of connecting. And one of my greatest examples of a connector, you and I share this Louisiana tie, and you actually know some of my family in Louisiana, right? Martha Gray, and that's my grandmother's sister. And they are some of the best connectors that I've ever seen in my life. So I had people to model that were great connectors. But I talk about the art of connecting and, how, like, what are some of the steps to connecting? So I think that's important too. Like when we ask people, are they connectors? There are a lot of people who think they are connectors. But when I go through some of the rubric of what that looks like, I'm like, there's still room for growth, right? So when you're connecting with people, and if you don't mind, I'll share a couple of the nuggets here. But when you're connecting with people, you want to create an opportunity for dialogue. And so often people get caught up into, oh, I'm an introvert. You can be an introvert and not be highly extroverted and highly eye-wired like I am, and still connect with people, because connecting is not about how loud you are. It's about identifying common ground with people so that you find those connecting points. And so that's another thing. When you're connecting with people, it also includes identifying and finding that common ground. That could be just like I just did with you, which is how you and I even met. You said something and you mentioned Louisiana and you said Lake Charles. And I'm like, Lake Charles? I know Lake Charles, you know the Grays, and so it's a great way before you start doing a whole lot of other things to identify that common ground with people. So I won't share all of the principles, but one other one that I like to share is, I talk about networking. And so often when people go into networking spaces, they go in looking for what I can get out of this space. Great connectors go in saying, how can I add value to this space? What do I have to offer when I'm entering into this space? And so as you all are determining or rating yourself on your connecting abilities, think more specifically too about what does real connecting look like, because that authenticity and connecting is so key. I find that a lot of times people think because they said hi to somebody, they connected. That's not a connection. You just spoke, right? You said hi, but that's not necessarily a connection point. So I believe connecting is just that critical that I think I'll probably include it in every book that I write.
Yeah, connecting is definitely important. So where do most high potential leaders fail?
I would say that most high potential leaders fail when they're not consistently growing by participating in training and development. Like when they think that they've arrived, I think that's when they fail. When they feel like, hey, I've made it, then I think that's when the failure begins.
Yeah. All right. I can agree with that. So in other words, what Tina is saying is don't ever think you're here yet, because guess what? There's this way to go and this way to go and this way to go. Right. So you got to always keep developing yourself. I love that. Remember that. That's a key phrase as we go forward here talking tonight. So how do you develop leadership in people who don't see themselves as leaders? Similar to what you were talking about with the connectors and the introvert people, right? But for those people who don't see themselves as a leader, how do you develop them?
Yeah, so my gift, this is an area that I'm really gifted in. But I've realized, Cedric, that I have to really balance this thing out a little bit, because I see potential in people that they often don't see in themselves. Like I've always been that way. And I remember even starting out at 23, I remember one of my coaches, which they weren't calling them coaches back then, but one of my mentors telling me, you can't always drag people kicking and screaming across the finish line because that's just something that's innate. Like I would want it for you much more than you want it for yourself sometimes, right? And so I had to really take a step back, and I have to take a step back a lot of times and really evaluate, does the person really want it? And then even if I see that, I don't know if they do, then I go, well, maybe they don't want it because they don't know they have the potential or the capacity or the capability, of doing it. So what I have found myself doing in cases like that is putting people in situations, sometimes without them even knowing it, right? You don't think you're leader, but I have found creative ways to give people responsibilities that they don't necessarily call leadership. But once they're executing and they're actually doing the thing, then they'll realize, I was actually leading. Or if they don't realize it, then I'll call it out for them and say, that was excellent how you just executed that. This is what a leader does. And you just demonstrated that in that way. So I have found that a lot of times I have to backdoor them sometimes a little bit, handhold, but give them that responsibility or that particular assignment and help them along in the assignment, and then come along at the end and exhort them and help them to understand what leadership qualities they displayed when they did it. And I find that really helps to develop them and develop their confidence as leaders. And then I'm able to give them the next thing. And then I don't have to camouflage it as much, because now I can say, okay, I need you to lead this particular thing. And they're not as afraid of the word leadership because they've seen themselves and they've actually experienced it. And I think that's something that's really key, because we throw the word leadership around, or people throw that word around so much that it intimidates people sometimes, right? And it's more than just the title. It's more of the how to, and how you're doing something, in my opinion.
Yeah. Okay, I like that. So now let's get real about leadership, right? So because
Real.
leadership sounds good in theory, but in practice, it comes with pressure, resistance, and difficult decisions, right? So let's talk
Mhm.
about the challenges and the truths that don't always get discussed when we talk about leadership, right?
Mhm.
So what is the hardest leadership challenge you personally faced?
Hmm. The hardest leadership challenge that I've personally, huh? Okay, I'm just gonna get real on it with you. So if we're gonna talk, we just it's real talk about
Let's
leadership.
talk. Yeah.
So, I would say honestly, the hardest challenge that I've faced, um, I'm an unapologetically Black woman leader. Like, I am who I am. You get what you get.
Yeah.
I was raised the way I was raised. I know who I am. I'm confident in my skin. And I can't help it if my presence can kind of cause people to feel some kind of way sometimes in certain spaces.
Yeah.
And I'm not shrinking back. And so I'm naming that because that was initially a leadership challenge, because you're taught to fit in the box and play the game and, you know, be palatable and all of those kinds of things, right?
Mhm. Right.
And I have to stand in. I told you, I was raised by 𝗟𝗲𝗡𝗵𝗂𝗧, Oprah Davis. I have Martha Gray and these strong women whose shoulders upon which I stand. Now, when I say that, there are some people that go, well, you never talk about men. Oh, I had a great father and grandfather and so forth, but I'm talking about my examples of how to walk this thing out. And so that has been a thing. But I'm so free and delivered from it that hey, you get what you get.
Yeah.
I even remember when I first started out in corporate America, when I was interning and things like that, and they were telling me how to wear my hair and all the don'ts and the rules, and I was like, what? Like, who's going to determine how I wear my hair? So I
Exactly.
say I was a millennial or had a millennial mind even before those terms were being thrown around, and certainly before millennials today, right? And
Right.
so I would say that, initially the challenge wasn't that I didn't know who I was or want to stand in my truth. The challenge was dealing with the people who were talking in my ear, trying to get me
Yeah.
to conform, and saying to me, be quiet, all those things, trying to silence my voice or label me, as they do
Yeah.
often with Black women. You voice your opinion in a space and they want to call you angry,
Right.
or they use
Yeah.
microaggressions and say you're difficult to work with and things like
Yeah.
that. And I've been in
Yeah.
the game for 33 years and I still experience that. And so because I have a daughter who is amazing and phenomenal and fabulous, I make sure that my daughter understands, no, you show up in the way that you know that God has gifted you to show up, and it's other people's problems and issues to deal with that. And I say that to my son too, but that's a different, even another dynamic that probably you
Sure.
can even speak to even more.
Definitely.
I
It's
guess
a
you can see
different.
I'm passionate about that, right?
You are passionate about it. I'm gonna talk about it on a different day because this is your show today. I want to keep the focus on you today, but I definitely
So,
can align with exactly what you're talking about. Right.
yeah. So to
So
your viewers, I'm telling them, don't shrink back. Stop all that shrinking back.
yes, I'm going to speak to some high school seniors at their awards banquet this week, later this week, and part of my speech in there is about not shrinking back, not just accepting that comfort zone area, not playing small because somebody else is afraid.
Yes.
Um, so,
That's not your problem. They're not your
exactly,
problem.
exactly. So, how do you handle leading through? This is a great question. At this time, we're talking about how do you handle leading through resistance or disengagement?
Well, okay. So the way that I handle leading through resistance or disengagement, if there are people that are a part of my team, for example, I am very strong about purpose and why. your why and purpose. And so when I find that there's resistance or disengagement, I'm always going to go back to the why. I'm always going to take it back to purpose, to mission, vision. And I want to reconnect people, so when we talk about disengagement, I want to reconnect them. And I find that a great way of reconnecting people is going back to the why. Why are you here? What is your purpose? Helping them actually connect their purpose or their individual why to the corporate why. And when I find that I do that, it really sparks something in them. And when something is sparked in them and they really see again, and they can now remember why they became a part of the organization or why they became a part of the project or the mission. And I'm exhorting them in that to say, hey, you became a part of this, and this is why you're so important in this. That's the strategy that I use and find it to be very effective. Because when people get disengaged, a lot of times it may be because they're burning out, or they don't feel valued, or they don't see their value in the thing or in the organization. And so reconnecting them and just sparking that fire again to that why has been very, very effective.
Yes, I love it. I like what Scott said. Hey, you don't need anyone's permission to be great. And this is a great message that I try to tell young people all the time. Don't wait. Look, your parents may not agree with your goals or your dreams. That's okay. God didn't give it to them. He gave it to you for a reason. Go be great, because he's not going to ask you when you go to those gates. He's not going to ask you, how well did you do with Big Mama's dream? How well did you do with your mama's dream? He's going to say, how well did you do with the dream I gave you?
That I gave you. Exactly. Yeah. And that's so, you saying that now is so, the timing is so appropriate, because I have two amazing young people. Like, I don't mind shouting them out. My kids are amazing. And what's so amazing, and the reason I say that is, I remember carrying them, and I remember just thinking about who they would be and what they would do. But one thing that I have look, and there's my daughter popping up in the chat. I've taught her well. See, one thing about it is that, I have always encouraged them to be their authentic selves and to identify their purpose and do what it is that they believe they're called to do. And that even stems back to my Auntie Martha, who I've mentioned several times that she reminds me consistently that her mother, my great-grandmother, who I also just had the privilege of knowing as a child, that my great-grandmother, 𝗟𝗏𝗟𝗡𝗄𝗏 sat her children down every single day and asked them, do you know what your purpose is? Has God revealed to you your purpose? And so she tells me all the time, she was like, the purpose-driven work that you're doing is not by happenstance. It's embedded in you, And so with my son graduating from high school in just a few weeks, and my daughter graduating from undergrad at Jackson State University on Saturday, that's so key what you just said, because that's what I say to them. Like, they don't even have to do it the same way, because they each are uniquely gifted in their own way, so that's key. So thank you for saying that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's important to keep reminding the younger generation that they have to go after their dreams with unbridled passion, and never give up, and know that failure is a part of the process. That's where young people go wrong, is when they fail, then they give themselves excuses and they say things like, oh, God didn't mean that for me. No, he meant it for you, but he just wants you to know that this is not going to be easy. You got to keep going, even in failure.
Exactly. And it's at every stage of life, and here's the thing, like, you can be knocking it out of the park and be successful here, and then something else you're doing, it can be considered that you think you're not, and it's failure, but it all works together,
Yes.
and I've come to understand that in my life,
Yes.
It's always that, I'm walking through a season right now, where it's like paradoxical, it's the best of times and it's the worst of times all at the same time. But that's what leadership is about, right? That's true leadership. I'm not folding. Yeah. I'm not going under. And most importantly, it's during those times every time that I excel the most. Every time.
Yes,
So
I agree
yes.
with you. So, what's one leadership habit that quietly destroys teams?
Let's see. A leadership habit that quietly destroys teams. Competition, I'd say. I'd say competition. I think that like, and I say in competition because that's something that happens and people don't sometimes realize that it's happening because it's very subtle and it is quiet. And so if we're a part of a team and we're supposed to be one and we're supposed to be moving towards one goal or one vision, but then individuals are quietly competing because they have their own self-interests. I've seen that tear teams apart. I've gone in and talked to senior leaders, CEOs who thought their teams were cohesive and who thought their teams were moving so well together. And then when I sat with each person individually to coach them, I'm going, that's not it. This person doesn't even realize that there's not one vision. There are multiple. So division.
Yes.
And so that's something that secretly happens. Like oftentimes people have these things, that they're dealing with that they're competing, it's secretly competing and it tears organizations apart, and one vision is all divided and now you don't have unity, you have division.
Yes, absolutely agree with that. Well, so this part of it has been very powerful. So, we started with foundation at the very beginning. And then we jumped into real leadership, what it looked like. And then we went to challenges and truths. Now we're going to dive into legacy and impact of leadership, right? So what kind of leaders is the world missing most right now?
I'd say that the kind of leader that the world is missing most right now is an unselfish leader.
Unselfish leader.
I'd say an unselfish leader. I think, I don't know, I just feel like so many people are just tied up into me. It's all about them. And I'm tired of it. I'm really tired of it. And so I believe that selflessness or that unselfish leader is what the world is really missing.
All right. So then we're going to go on the campaign to find these unselfish leaders.
Let's go,
So what does sustainable leadership look like long term?
I think that when we talk about sustainable leadership, so this is really key. And in real time, I will tell you, we had bad weather. And so I'm just making a shift here because it's doing something to the Wi-Fi. And so I'm going to keep talking, but I'm making a shift to make sure. So, I think that sustainable leadership, real sustainable leadership, the term that I would use is, one of my terms from athletics, and that is strong bench. Strong bench. So, again, I look back at my basketball days, and my kids love to hear me tell stories about that because I tell them, I say, I never sat on the bench. I never rode the bench. And that's a true thing. Like, that's a true statement. I don't really, when I talk about this principle of strong bench, I have to be honest and say that I never really rode the bench.
Okay.
I started as a freshman, and I started every year, right? But I still knew the importance of strong bench because we couldn't stay in the game the whole time, right?
Right.
The starters had to come out. They had to take breaks. Some had injuries and things like that. And so I believe.
So let me stop you right there. Let me say. So are you saying right now that you can take Maya and your son?
Yeah. So Maya's not a basketball player. Now she'll challenge me in track, with jumping and stuff.
All right.
Now my son, I joke with him about it, and he's like, "Mom, I'll dunk all over you," and I'm like, "You'll dunk over me. You do have that advantage of dunking." But my jump shot, you can't do anything with. So,
So, hey guys, we got to go to St. Louis, and we got to watch the game.
I'll hoop in heels. I know my friends who listen in are cracking up right now. but I always say that I hoop in heels, you know. But
Okay.
but yeah, I believe that strong bench is really important for sustainability. Succession planning, another way of saying that, you know, as well. So often I see organizations struggle, you know, if they've had a leader for a very long time. You know, I see this in ministries a lot, you know, growing up in
Mhm.
church and stuff, where the pastor can pastor until he's 90, you know, and then the pastor passes away and they're scrambling trying to find a pastor. And I'm like, well,
Yeah.
how does that happen? You know? And it's not
Yeah.
just in churches, it's in all orgs. Like, how do you let a leader stay in a role? And the best time to start training your bench and having successors, not a successor, but
Yeah.
successors, that's
Yeah.
sustainability, right? So
Yes.
we're so short-minded. Like, we're looking at stuff a year from now or 5 years from now when we should be looking at stuff 10 and 15 and 20 and 30 and 40 years from now. Like, I want to know 50 years from now. Like, I need to be setting up for not my children, but my children's children and my children's children's children, you know, if you know.
Right.
So that's really important. And so I believe that that strong bench and real succession planning is important. And then when the baton is finally handed off, a lot of times it's late. So the leader's dried out, you know, the leader doesn't have much to give. So
Right.
while you're in your peak as a leader, or at your peak as a leader, is when you should be developing that strong bench. But you know why? It goes back to that word I said earlier. Why people don't do that?
Selfish.
Competition,
Mhm.
selfishness, right? Because
Mhm.
everybody
Yes.
wants the spotlight.
Yes.
But if you look at the mission or the vision or the why, that should outlive you. That should
Right.
supersede you, right?
Right.
And so we shouldn't be that shallow as leaders to be afraid of, well, if I pour all of this into these people and have strong bench, then they might take over, or people are going to follow them and stuff like that. It's like, no, this is larger. It's
See,
larger
it's
than you.
because people use the word leadership, but they don't really embrace what leadership is.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I say this about Christians, and I'm a Christian, but Christians go to church on Sunday and Monday and Tuesday and all day Wednesday and Thursday and Friday. They may rest on Saturday, back in there on Sunday. They know the scripture in and out, but they don't embrace it. You see, because they will have faith as long as things are going good. But when things become bad, oh no, they can't read the Bible then. They can't, I got to handle it myself. You see, they understand that the scripture says do this, do this, do this, except when it affects them, they forget all about that. Right?
Yeah.
We say, hey, God is greatness, right? God only makes great things. So that means he made us in our greatness, but we settle for less. You see, we get in our comfort zone and we settle here. But we say we're a Christian and God is great, right? And we talk about Solomon, we talk about other rich people in scripture, but the things that we need to do to be there, we don't. We talk about the pence, you know, the guy with the 1 pence, the 2 pence, and the 4 pence. We talk about them, but we don't embrace it. You see? I'm sorry, I got on my
No,
high.
I say preach, Cedric. No, but absolutely. That is so right. And it's so true. You know, and I have, you know, it's so important. You didn't ask me this question, but, you know, it's so important who we surround ourselves with. You know,
Yes.
like every leader needs a leader. Every coach needs a coach. And in addition to that, you need people around you. When you execute at the level of leadership that you and I do, it's easy. Like, a lot of times people won't give us critical feedback. Am I right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, but we need that. Like, so I have a short list, you know, and really two who come to mind, and one really comes to mind who I'm sure is listening right now. There's one person who will always tell me the truth, will always stretch me, right? And actually, my uncle, an uncle that has always, two uncles that have always been this way as well. I mean, I would be knocking it out of the park growing up, have lists of accomplishments yay long. And I have two uncles that no matter what everybody else was saying and cheering, they always gave me the critical feedback and they helped me to get better. and they help me to grow. That's Uncle Jack and Uncle John. They always help me to grow, right? And I have, it's important to do that, and I have in this season, you were just talking about, what you were talking about to me is faith, and so even as a leader, everybody looks and they think, they say they see the glory, but they don't know the story, right? That kind of thing.
Right.
I mean, leadership is an awesome weight of responsibility. I mean, it is an awesome weight of responsibility. And so leaders go through things and you don't necessarily know it. Like you're not gonna see me bent over, busted and disgusted. You're just not gonna ever see that. But it doesn't mean that I'm not going through different things, right? I'm always going through, and I'm going through more things than most people because I am leading at a high level, right? And because I have influence and, and those kinds of things. And so it's so important. And I just want to shout out and say thank you, to my friend and tribe who hold me down in that way, because you need to be sure as a leader that you're surrounding yourself, because everybody can't carry that weight of responsibility, right? As leader. And then even the people who are around you have to be able to, to help you to carry that weight. Now, of course, I know, we cast all our cares on God. There's some earthly people here, that we need. Yes. And that we need people who we can be vulnerable. And I fire myself often. I've been an entrepreneur for 33 years, but I might go to sleep tonight and say, you're fired, because I'm just tired, and then when I get up tomorrow, I'm like, okay, you hired, and I be about the business. And then I need those people that are speaking into my life, in the way that they can handle the weight. And when I say certain things, they're not going to fall under, like, oh my God, and freak out, because, and those people are few and far between, I found in my life that they're few and far between. So often I can't even say to somebody as a leader, like my finger hurts, because they'll panic. Your finger hurts. Oh my God. I don't need the panic. I need the person who can say, okay, your finger hurts, disinfect it, get the Band-Aid, wrap it up, take your Tylenol if you need to, and get back out there and do what it is that you need to do.
Yes. 100% agree with you. In fact, just a few weeks ago, so 𝗟𝗲𝗡𝗵𝗶𝗽 is one of those people who I hold in high regard. I respect her opinion and feedback, and she is willing to give me direct feedback, right? And I set up a call with her because I said, hey, you're going to be the only person that's going to tell me the truth about this situation. So let's have a conversation. And that's what she did, right? Yeah. Critical thinking helps you. I mean, it's not that you make all great decisions. Some decisions are good, some are great, some are not all that great, right? And you want somebody to be able to tell you, hey, it's not a good decision. Even though you're running faster than a person, doesn't mean that they can't tell you, hey, when you made a good decision or a great decision, right? Everybody brings a different perspective. And sometimes you need that level of critical thinking so that you can get on the right path. I remember when I was still in corporate, I was traveling with one of our VPs, and after the meeting, I sent him an email and said, hey, how did you think the call went? And he told me a whole lot of great stuff. And I said, that's great, but here's what I'm looking for. I said, and his name is Mark Smith. He may listen to this, but his name is Mark Smith. And I said, Mark, look, this is great, but here's what I need. I need you to critically think about the call and tell me what I can do different or better. And here's what he said. He said, Cedric, he said, and I was the leader of the sales team. He says, Cedric, you did a great job in the call. He goes, I would just tell you, be yourself. He said, you were in that call, you were trying to focus on our sales process. And I was, versus just being myself. I knew the customer. I was a rep when she was my customer before. But in that moment, I could feel myself being tense because the VP was here with me, right? He said, just be yourself. Don't worry about the process. And so, yeah, we need those things from time to time. So,
well, I wanted to say, shout out to Angela. I love Angela. Shout out to Angela. 𝗟𝗲𝗡𝗵𝗶𝗽. She is that girl.
Yes, she is.
Yes, she is. Mhm.
So now, are you just saying that because she's a Delta?
No, that's
Yeah.
not why. No, she is that girl as well. But no, Angela, fire identifies fire. And when I first met Angela, we just naturally connected. And what I love about Angela is you also can identify people. I talked about not that competitive spirit. You can also identify people very quickly who have like spirits, and that's what I loved about Angela. She's bona fide, dope, walks in her space, knows who she is. So do I. And we can come together, and I appreciate women like Angela, because I don't have the story in my life that, I don't know how to get along with women. It's like my mother and my aunts modeled sisterhood for me, and so I just love the beauty of sisterhood. So that's what it is.
Awesome. So now we got to switch gears a little bit. All right. So this is a segment we call rapid fire. Quick questions, quick answers. Don't overthink it. Just go with your first instinct, right? We say 10 questions, no script, real leadership. So generally 1-word answer. So leadership is
rare.
The most underrated leadership trait.
Listening.
The most overused leadership buzzword.
Imposter syndrome.
Okay. Best leadership book you've read.
Grand Anthology by Tina Grimes.
All right. Oh my God. I'm gonna change that question around next time. Best leadership book that you didn't write that you read.
That's anything by Dr. Miles Monroe.
All right. Worst leadership habit.
Micromanaging.
All right. Hires for skill or mindset?
Mindset all day long.
All right. Morning routine or night routine?
I'm gonna say night routine because most people say morning, but my night routine is night routine.
Okay. All right. Discipline or motivation?
Discipline.
Right. Leader you admire the most?
Dr. Miles Monroe.
All right. I thought she was going to say Cedric, but never mind. All right.
That was a given, that was just like, you got to change the question around because I can't say my book. Of course,
All right. 1 word that defines your leadership style.
Wait, repeat that one again.
1 word that defines your leadership style.
1 word. Okay. You're going to like this one. It's Tina. Because it stands for turning intent into action. So I get to put 4 words in one.
Okay. All righty. We're going to run with that one then. So it's been incredible conversation. I like the real talk. And hopefully our guests enjoyed the same thing as well. Thank you guys for tuning in. I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your perspective and your work in developing leaders who actually lead, right? That's the most important thing. But before we wrap up, let people know how they can connect with you and learn more about what you're building.
Okay. Yeah. So, and if you don't mind, I want to say hi to Kenrick because I saw him saying hi in the comments as well. And he's another amazing leader. So the way to reach me on all my social media handles is at Tina Will Speak on Instagram. I am on LinkedIn under Tina E. Grimes. So everything else is at Tina Will Speak. And then my website, which is where you will find a lot of great information, resources, books. My newest product that came out on intergenerational communication is at my website, which is TinaEnterprises.com. TinaEnterprises.com.
All right. So it sounds like if you just Google Tina, you'll find her.
Tina E. Grimes. Put the E. Tina E. Grimes. There is another Tina Grimes out there, which is interesting that I saw.
Oh, okay. All right. So Tina E. Grimes. Okay. All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and for everyone who's tuned in tonight, if this conversation challenged you, if it stretched you, or if it gave you something to think about, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with other people that may need it. This is Cedric Unplugged, Leadership Insights, where we keep the conversation real and leadership intentional. I'm Cedric LaFleur, your host. This is Tina E. Grimes, our guest tonight. I hope that you have a great evening. We'll tune in next Monday at 6:30 p.m. I think my guest is going to be Darius Smith. So, you know, I am a publisher as well, and we published his book. So come and check that out next Monday, 6:30 Central Time. This is Cedric Unplugged. Thank you guys, and have a great evening.